Hey everybody, today we're doing something fun. For the second time, I had somebody send me some homebrew from overseas. And it happened before with a guy from Israel named Adam. I think I have a video on that, tasting his homebrew. And this time I have Guy, who is originally from England. He's been living in Japan. And he brews in his apartment, small batches, brew in a bag, and he sent me a couple homebrews and a commercial beer. So at the end of this video, you'll have Chip and I tasting all of those. Now another thing that's cool is he made a video just for me about his setup, his process. I'm going to give you a little preview right now, but I want to have you go and watch it. I will try to link it right about now in this video. If I'm unable to do that with the way that YouTube has changed their setup, then look below the video, hit the show more button, something like that. I will definitely have a link there. He said it's okay if everybody else watches it, but he said I wish I would have made a better video if I would have known. So what I want you to think about is if you're in a foreign country or in an apartment where your ingredients might be limited and your space and equipment might be limited, you can still brew. So here is a picture of what he sent, and then here is the video.
And yeah, I'm originally from Cornwall, England. I've been resident in Japan for 7.5 years, something like that. So yeah, my setup is pretty simple. I mash and boil in this.
So yeah, watch this video, see what you think. I know that I have other people from overseas watching these videos as well, which is awesome. And if you have tips and tricks on how you do your small apartment, it could be in the US as well, or limited ingredients brewing, go ahead and comment away. And let's get on to the tasting. Let's try these beers from Japan. We're gonna pour them both out. We'll see if, oh, there you go. They're bottle conditioned. In fact, here, why don't you do the honors over there. And we'll give them a little taste. This is a robust porter, 9%, so I don't know if there's an imperial porter. Baltic porter, if it was, I think that's a lot of these, but that's a pretty big beer. Now, I'm not positive, but I think this one might be modeled after a robust porter that I've made. Mine is not 9%. And this one is called Rye Hammer. This one says copy, and the porter says copy, so I don't know if that's signal to him that it's not an original recipe. 7% ABV on the Rye Hammer, final gravity 1010, final gravity on the robust porter 1022. So that must be a pretty good original gravity if it is 9%. So we're going to do a little tasting and we'll come back. We've been tasting these beers for a little while, and I do have a little bit of information. Chip was like, it's weird that he sent you these beers and not send you some information. And I was like, yeah, it is kind of weird. And then I was like, wait a minute, maybe he did. So I'm glad I went and checked. Let's talk about the Rye Hammer. It is a clone of a Brewdog Rye Hammer, which does have a brew pub or some type of establishment in Tokyo, which is where a guy is living.
Or at least they have had one.
There you go.
I bet it's still there.
So what we don't know is the age of it. We do know some of the ingredients. 2 parts pale, 1 part rye. So I would say roughly 66% to 33%.
Yep.
Check that math. Mosaic and Nugget hops at 60, 30, 0. Should be Columbus and Centennial, but he cannot get those. So he
In Japan.
he wung it. And also dry hops with 1 ounce each of Simcoe, Citra, Amarillo, fermented with 04 English dry yeast.
He sent us an unlisted video where he gave us this little cool tour of his what looked to be a 1-room apartment.
I will.
Have you already done that?
I will have addressed that. in the intro.
The point being,
you should check it out if you are able.
I was going to relay that, he can only get the dry yeast, which we've both had beef with throughout our 10 years as homebrewers.
It's not my personal favorite type of yeast, but if that is the only yeast that I could get, I would use it.
Yeah.
I think this beer is, it's nice and clear, it has a good carbonation, it is a beautiful color. As far as the hops, this is what I was getting at a second ago. I'm not sure how old it is, because with real hoppy beers, they may be good for a period of weeks, and then they start turning a little bit. And this one it has some bitterness that I think is from the hops, but also, like I said, the dry yeast, I never know. Sometimes the beers I've made with the dry yeast, it has a little kind of bitterness that sometimes liquid yeast don't have. But otherwise,
and this is a 7% beer that's ended at 10:10, so it's dry, it's a little astringent, but I don't get the nose that you would expect for the hop bill, but I can pull out citrus, lemon, grassy. I feel like it's more of the nugget side of things than probably the mosaic. But
with mosaic you might get other sorts of
it just tastes more like one of those new IPAs, where this to me tastes like just like a good, almost like a throwback to 10 years ago.
Or West Coast.
Yeah.
Just kind of bitter and a little bit drier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a suitable effort. I don't think it's the best example of the freshest, bursting, brightest hop IPA that you're going to get, but I don't know if you can make that even in Japan with the ingredients available.
Yeah. Yeah, so he had to kind of compromise on the hops out the gate. And
another thing we're not talking about very much is it's 33% rye.
Yeah.
And rye can add a spiciness. It can add a different flavor character that is not always the same from barley.
Yeah.
So that could also be a factor that is worth considering.
Neither of us, for the record, have had the beer that this is a clone of.
That is true. I have had the beer that this is a clone of.
Why is that?
Because he took my robust porter recipe, which I think I took from, no, I can't remember. I want to say Jamil, or I think it's...
You want me to look it up while you talk?
No. I'll cut it out.
Oh, research assistant. Here,
Yeah.
you just keep freestyling, man. You got some stuff.
Anyway, it's a robust porter I've made a couple of times that I really enjoy, and he, again, had to substitute a couple of things. Hops, which should be not a big deal because this is not a particularly hoppy beer. I'm pretty sure mine is not 9%, so he got a little extra gravity on that. But this one smells much more like what you expect when you hear robust porter. Immediately get the cocoa and the roast. There's a sweetness. It's a final gravity of 1022. I think mine is actually kind of high too. It'll be like 1017, 1018. They do finish higher with all those highly kiln malts, so that gives a certain sort of aroma and flavor, all the residual sweetness.
You've brewed this beer multiple times. This is not steaming robust porter, right? It's just robust.
Well, that
AG.
would just be with the steam yeast, but if you look in like 16, 17...
Oh, there
is
it is.
that it?
Founders Porter attempt from some online searching.
Oh, maybe it was kind of an original one then.
Sort of a Founders Porter.
So Chip has been doing my homework, and maybe this was a recipe that I cobbled together from different online sources and made my own tweak of it. Maybe it wasn't a Jamil recipe, but I have made many of those Jamil recipes, and they're usually very good. But maybe this is not one of those. At any rate,
If it's 9% and finished at 1022, that means it was 1100?
Good. That's a good question. 1080, high 80s, 1080s.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that.
But
I don't know.
it definitely feels nice and good for a surprisingly snowy week in St. Paul. It's a winter beer.
I mean, this one, the Rye Hammer, like I said, I don't know how old it was. Different hops. The hops themselves could have maybe not been in the best shape when Guy got them. Whereas this one, also the English yeast, I think lends itself better to something with all this residual flavor in there because if a dry yeast, not just English, but dry yeast to me sometimes does contribute its own sort of bitterness, then that's gonna be kind of okay in a beer with this much flavor. You like this big porter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got a little bit, it's almost got this slight kind of acidity to it at the very end. Not astringent, but acidity that's almost reminiscent of like a very bitter chocolate. Which is nice. So it could also be from the hops.
Yeah, I think
chocolate, espresso, the classic things you would want in something like this, but you get that booze like
Yeah.
in a good way, in a little like
I guess I'm not getting that as
cheap
much as
raising way.
you would think that you would.
Not
Definitely got
not in
cocoa.
like booze, but when you drink it, it kind of coats.
Oh, okay.
It's a little
Warms
cool.
you?
Yeah, it's a little cool on the outtake.
There you go. There are the homebrews. We will rinse a glass out and try this beer. This is said to be a, what does it say? Olaho beer, extra pale ale, Captain Crown, transporter Captain. There's a lot of stuff going on here. Handcrafted for enjoyment. This one, he said, is a good example of a craft beer that's widely available in Japan, but that is also a good drinking, flavorful, nicely made craft beer. So, it will be fun to give it a try. I do remember the
Hated it.
homies in the back of the van. We got players, we got TVs, you gotta get down here quick. Okay,
Good old days. Mobile.
survey says extra pale ale from Nagano.
Captain Crow, extra pale ale.
It doesn't, to me, it's not throwing off a ton of aroma. Either way, you said you were
Yeah, I got.
smelling maybe a little grapefruit.
Yeah. That's kind of exactly. I mean, what I would expect from it is what I'm getting, just not nearly as kind of like. And this is gonna sound like, oh, America, yay, but just not as 100% and solid as, say, like Summit's EPA, which is like biscuit, citrus, from the, I guess it's Cascade and Horizon, whatever, and there's C45 or C60. But I could see this being like not a bad best option if this is what you
Depends,
got.
right. Depends
Yeah.
on
I mean,
what
I
the
have
other
no
options are.
I have no
and
idea what the scope of craft
how
brewing
much
is in Japan.
sake you can drink and whatever else is around. Right, that's true. Or maybe it's light lagers. I find this to be bitter, overall tipping to the bitter side and not as much of a balance. It's kind of thin. I would guess the final gravity is somewhat low. It also reminds me, when you were talking, I just thought of what it reminds me of. It reminds me of a beer that's bitterness is outstepping its bounds. And when I think of that, I think of Session IPA.
It's got a
Session
session IPA feel.
whatever have you, that all the hops and all the bitterness without all the alcohol. Well, that means it's probably a lower original gravity and often probably a lower final gravity than you need to support that bitterness. That's sort of my take of it. But like you say, there's certainly a drinkable beer.
Yeah.
It has. Would I rather drink this or a more boring light lager? I don't know. I certainly would want this as an option for sometimes because it does have closer to what we know and love as a nice craft beer.
Yeah, and personal preference comes in too, because I wouldn't want this too much more caramel malty, just because I don't appreciate that in my IPAs, EPAs, pale ale. So
maybe just a couple more gravity points on the end.
yeah,
I mean, even if it's just pale
and they
malt.
might use dry yeast too. Like we don't know how much of that's coming even from the professional application of dry yeast. I know that breweries in South America can only get dry yeast, or at least really
Well,
easily.
then, that would be a fighting bet,
Yeah.
I would think. Not that kind of fight.
You want to bet?
Whew, cut it out. Cut him off.
Yeah, we got some gravity.
This was really a fun thing to try, though. Guy, thank you so much for sending this stuff, emailing me back and forth. good luck moving back to England, which you are
To the land of liquid yeast.
will have already done by the time this video would be out there.
And more
Everyone else, check out Guy's video, which he said is okay for me to share, and I'll intro that. You'll see that in the intro. And yeah, thanks for coming over, Chip, and catch you later.
Off a brew.
Brew for all. What are we going back to? BTV?